The Galactic Union was a vast and powerful organization, overseeing countless planets and species across the galaxy. It had strict rules, an even stricter hierarchy, and functioned like a machine. Everything had to serve a purpose, contribute to the greater good, or be discarded. Among the many planets under its governance was the homeworld of the Plens, a peaceful and intelligent race known for their advanced understanding of biology and medicine. For centuries, they had contributed to the Union's knowledge and well-being, offering cures and treatments that saved countless lives. But then came the catastrophe. A nearby star began to die, and the radiation it emitted threatened to wipe out all life on the Plaren homeworld. They had advanced technology, but not enough to save themselves from the impending doom. Desperate, they reached out to the Galactic Union, their supposed protectors. But the response they received was cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of compassion. The Union saw no strategic value in saving the Plarens. They were not a military power, nor did their planet hold resources that were essential to the galaxy's economy. Their contributions in medicine, while valuable, were no longer unique. The Union had other sources now. And so, the Plarens were left to die. The Plarens didn't give up immediately. They sent plea after plea, each more desperate than the last, but all were met with silence. The Union had already moved on. As the radiation from the dying star worsened, the Plarens were forced to flee their homeworld in what few ships they had. These weren't battle cruisers or heavily armored vessels, just transport ships, not built to endure the harsh realities of deep space for extended periods. They became a race of refugees, scattered across the galaxy, barely surviving on derelict stations, abandoned outposts, and in the dark corners of space where no one cared to look. Their numbers dwindled with each passing year, as disease, starvation, and raids from pirates took their toll. The once proud and advanced Plarens were now a shadow of their former selves, reduced to scavenging and begging for scraps from other races that viewed them as nuisances. Some Plarens tried to integrate with other societies, offering their skills in medicine in exchange for protection, but they were often exploited or outright rejected. Most races in the galaxy had adopted the Union's view that if a species couldn't contribute militarily or economically, it was not worth saving. This mindset had spread like a disease, infecting the entire galaxy with apathy toward those in need. The Plarens' hopes slowly faded. They no longer sent out calls for help. They no longer believed anyone would come. They had been abandoned, forgotten, left to die in the cold expanse of space. But not all of them had given up. There were still a few among the Plarens who refused to let their race vanish without a fight. One such Plaren was Kuran, a former scientist who had watched his homeworld fall apart. He had seen friends and family perish, and the galaxy's indifference had hardened him. But unlike many of his kind, Kuran's spirit wasn't broken. He believed that somewhere out there had to be someone who would listen, someone who would help. In a last, desperate act, Kuran sent out one final message into the void. It wasn't a formal request to the Union, nor was it a plea to any particular race. It was a general distress call, a cry for help that he sent across the galaxy on all frequencies. He didn't expect much. In fact, he expected nothing. But still, he sent it, knowing that without hope, there was only death. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The Plarens continued to survive, barely, as the galaxy continued to ignore them. Kuran's message drifted through space, unnoticed, unheard, just another signal lost in the sea of noise that filled the galactic airwaves. It seemed that his last act of hope was in vain. Then, something happened that no one had anticipated. On a distant human colony, far from the heart of the Galactic Union's control, a group of explorers intercepted Kuran's message. The humans were relatively new to the galactic scene, still expanding their influence, and establishing colonies on the fringes of known space. They weren't as technologically advanced as some of the older races, but they had one thing that the Union and many others had lost: a sense of compassion. The humans who received Kuran's message were explorers, but they were also settlers. They had come to the galaxy's edge to start new lives, to build something better. And when they heard the Plaren's distress call, they didn't hesitate. They knew what it was like to be on the fringes, to be overlooked by the larger powers. They decided they would act, no matter the cost. The message was forwarded to Earth, and within days, humanity's leaders made the decision. They would help. They had no political ties to the Plens, no strategic interest in their survival, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that a species was on the verge of extinction, and humanity had the power to do something about it. Preparations began immediately. A fleet was assembled, ships carrying medical supplies, food, and rescue personnel, as well as military escorts to fend off any threats they might encounter. This wasn't just a mission of mercy, it was a statement. Humanity would not stand by while others suffered. As the fleet prepared to launch, word spread throughout the human colonies. People volunteered in droves to join the mission, inspired by the idea that they could make a difference. It wasn't just about saving the Plens. It was about proving that the galaxy could be better, that it didn't have to be a place where the weak were left to die. And so, with hope restored, the human fleet set off into the stars, heading toward the sector where the Plens were believed to be hiding. They knew it wouldn't be easy. Pirates and scavengers roamed those regions, preying on the desperate and the abandoned. But the humans were undeterred. They had a mission, and they would see it through. For the first time in years, the Plens had a glimmer of hope. Unbeknownst to them, help was finally on the way. Humanity's fleet moved with purpose, cutting through the stars with a clear goal: to save the Plens. Despite being relatively new on the galactic stage, humans had always been driven by a strong sense of justice. They had no formal alliances with the Plens, no economic or military reasons to involve themselves in this mission, but none of that mattered. What drove them was the simple belief that no species should be left to die in the cold vacuum of space. It was a principle they lived by, a sense of duty to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As the fleet advanced, the human leadership reviewed what little data they had about the Plens. They learned of their incredible contributions to medicine and the tragedy of their fall from grace. But what struck them most was the cold indifference of the Galactic Union. For the Union to abandon a race based on perceived strategic value felt abhorrent to humans. It wasn't how they saw the universe. To humanity, every life mattered, regardless of political or economic worth. Within days, they arrived in the sector where the last of the Plens had taken refuge. What they found was far worse than they had imagined. Derelict ships drifted in space, barely operational. Some of the vessels were so ancient and damaged that it was a miracle they were still functional. The Plens themselves were emaciated, their numbers drastically reduced from years of scavenging and surviving on scraps. Their once vibrant society had been reduced to this, a broken people clinging to life on the edge of extinction. The Plens were initially cautious when the humans arrived. They had been burned too many times before by other species that had promised help but instead took advantage of their weakness. Yet the humans were different. They didn't come with demands or expectations. They came with supplies, medicine, and open arms, asking nothing in return. They were there to help, nothing more. The first few days were spent stabilizing the Plens. Medical teams worked tirelessly, tending to the sick and injured, while engineers worked to repair the damaged ships. The Plens were still in shock. After years of being ignored, they couldn't believe someone had finally come to their aid. Some were skeptical, wondering if this was just another race exploiting them for their skills. But the humans proved their sincerity with action, not words. As the Plens grew stronger, they began to tell the humans their full story, their desperate attempts to get the Galactic Union to help, the raids by pirates, and the years of suffering in isolation. The humans listened, horrified at the galaxy's apathy. It only strengthened their resolve. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a chance to show the rest of the galaxy that there was another way, a better way. However, it wasn't long before word spread that a human fleet had entered the sector. Pirates and scavengers who had long preyed on the Plens saw this as an opportunity. They had grown accustomed to raiding the weak and unprotected. Now, a fleet full of fresh supplies and advanced technology was within their grasp, and they wouldn't pass up the chance. The first attack came under the cover of darkness. A small group of pirate ships, equipped with cloaking devices, attempted to ambush the human fleet. But the humans were prepared. Despite being a relatively young spacefaring race, humanity had long learned to expect the worst. Their sensors detected the approaching ships, and the human fleet responded with swift and calculated precision. Human warships engaged the pirates head-on, while the medical and supply vessels retreated to a safe distance. The battle was fierce, with both sides exchanging volleys of fire, but the pirates had underestimated the humans. The humans fought not just with weapons, but with tactics and strategy that the pirates had never encountered before. They used decoys and false signals, luring the pirate ships into traps before launching coordinated strikes. One by one, the pirate ships fell, their cloaking devices useless against the humans' ingenuity. What the pirates thought would be an easy raid turned into a slaughter. The humans didn't fight for territory or spoils. They fought to protect the innocent, and that made them far more dangerous than any pirate could have imagined. The battle ended with the human fleet victorious, the pirates either destroyed or fleeing back into the depths of space. The Plens watched in awe, having never seen a race fight so fiercely on their behalf. It was in that moment they realized that humanity was different. They weren't just rescuers. They were protectors, willing to risk everything to save a race they barely knew. After the battle, the humans resumed their efforts to rebuild the Plaren fleet. This time, however, the Plarens were more than willing to help. Inspired by humanity's selflessness, they worked side by side with the humans, repairing their ships and sharing their knowledge. For the first time in years, the Plarens felt a sense of hope, a belief that they might not just survive, but thrive once again. In the midst of this, the humans received word from Earth. Their actions had not gone unnoticed by the Galactic Union. Some Union members were furious, accusing humanity of overstepping its bounds. After all, the Plarens had been written off by the Union, and no one expected them to return. But others within the Union were quietly impressed. Humanity had done what they themselves had failed to do, show compassion and strength in equal measure. The Plarens, for their part, knew where their loyalties lay. They had no interest in returning to the Union that had abandoned them. They chose humanity, aligning themselves with the humans who had saved them. It was a new chapter in their history, one that they would write together with their newfound allies. For humanity, this was just the beginning. The rescue of the Plarens marked a turning point. It was a signal to the rest of the galaxy that humanity wasn't just another race looking to expand its territory. They were something else entirely, a race that believed in doing what was right, no matter the cost. The galaxy was starting to take notice, and humanity's role in the universe was about to change forever. The human fleet, now stationed in the Plaren sector, was fully aware that their mission was far from over. Rescuing the Plarens was one thing, but ensuring their safety and future survival was another. The pirate attack had been a harsh reminder that the galaxy was filled with opportunists who thrived on the misfortune of others. These predators had grown accustomed to raiding vulnerable populations like the Plarens without facing any significant resistance. But the humans weren't about to let that continue. After the initial pirate assault, the humans strengthened their defensive perimeter. They positioned their fleet strategically, ready to counter any future attacks. They knew that their presence in the sector was no longer a secret, and it was only a matter of time before more hostile forces arrived. The pirates weren't the only threat. Mercenaries, scavengers, and even factions within the Galactic Union itself might take issue with humanity's actions. Despite the looming danger, the humans continued their mission. They provided the Plarens with food, medical supplies, and technology to restore some of the functionality to their battered ships. The Plarens, still in awe of the humans' generosity and military prowess, worked tirelessly alongside their new allies. For the first time in years, they had hope, and that hope fueled their determination to rebuild. But rebuilding would take time, and time was not a luxury they had. It wasn't long before reports came in of another approaching force. This time, it wasn't just pirates. This was a full-scale mercenary fleet, hired by unknown benefactors, likely with ties to those who had profited from the Plarens' demise. The mercenaries were well-equipped, heavily armed, and clearly had no intention of negotiating. The humans knew they were outnumbered, but they weren't about to back down. This wasn't just a battle to protect the Plarens anymore. It was a battle to prove that humanity would not tolerate the exploitation of the weak. They had come to this sector with the intention of saving lives, and they were prepared to fight to ensure that mission succeeded. As the mercenary fleet closed in, the human commanders gathered to plan their defense. They knew that a direct confrontation would be difficult. The mercenaries had more ships and heavier firepower. But the humans had something the mercenaries lacked: tactical ingenuity and an unbreakable will to protect. They formulated a plan that relied on deception, misdirection, and precision strikes, knowing they had to use every advantage they could muster. When the mercenaries finally arrived, they were greeted by what appeared to be a weakened human fleet, seemingly vulnerable after the recent pirate attack. The mercenaries, confident in their superior numbers, moved in aggressively, expecting an easy victory. But what they didn't realize was that the humans had set a trap. The human fleet, though smaller, was far from helpless. As the mercenaries approached, the humans lured them into a false sense of security, drawing them closer to the heart of the sector. Then, at the perfect moment, the humans sprang their trap. Using decoys and advanced cloaking technology, they flanked the mercenary fleet from multiple directions, cutting off their escape routes and targeting their most vulnerable ships. The mercenaries, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the battle, found themselves in disarray. The humans struck with precision, disabling key systems on the enemy's ships and neutralizing their heavy weaponry. The mercenaries tried to regroup, but the humans didn't give them a chance. They pressed the attack, using their smaller ships' speed and agility to outmaneuver the bulkier mercenary vessels. Within hours, the tide of battle had turned. The mercenary fleet, once so confident in its superiority, was now in full retreat. Some ships managed to escape, but many were either destroyed or captured by the human forces. It was a decisive victory, not just for humanity but for the Plens as well. The message was clear: humanity was not a race to be underestimated, and they would defend those who couldn't defend themselves. After the battle, the humans wasted no time in securing the sector. They deployed long-range sensors and patrols to ensure no further threats could sneak up on them. The Plens, once again in awe of the humans' capabilities, began to see their future in a new light. They no longer viewed themselves as a doomed race, abandoned by the galaxy. With humanity by their side, they had the chance to rebuild, to reclaim their dignity and place in the stars. In the days that followed, human engineers worked tirelessly to repair the Plens ships, upgrading their systems with the latest human technology. The Plens, once passive victims, were now becoming active participants in their own survival. Under the guidance of the human engineers, they learned how to adapt and improve their own technology, creating a hybrid system that blended their advanced medical knowledge with human ingenuity. The partnership between the two races grew stronger with each passing day. Humanity's unwavering commitment to the Plens had earned them not just gratitude, but loyalty. The Plens vowed to stand with humanity, just as humanity had stood with them. Together, they began to rebuild a fleet, not a fleet of war, but one of exploration and healing, a symbol of what could be achieved when races work together for the greater good. But even as they celebrated their victories and looked to the future, the humans remained vigilant. They knew that their actions had not gone unnoticed by the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Union, in particular, had begun to take an interest in what was happening in the Plens sector. Some within the Union were outraged that humanity had defied their unwritten rules and intervened in a situation that had been deemed unimportant. Others, however, were intrigued by humanity's boldness and the strength of their convictions. For now, the Plens were safe, and humanity had proven itself to be a force for good in a galaxy that had grown cold and indifferent. But the humans knew that their fight was far from over. The galaxy was watching, and soon, humanity would face challenges far greater than pirates and mercenaries. But if there was one thing the Plens had learned, it was that when humanity made a promise, they kept it. They had promised to save the Plens, and they had delivered. Now, they stood together, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them next. With the Plens now safe and the immediate threats neutralized, humanity's focus shifted to the long-term restoration of the Plens civilization. The humans didn't see this as the end of their mission but rather the beginning of something much larger. The Tlerans had been pushed to the edge of extinction, and while humanity had saved them from immediate danger, there was still much work to be done to ensure their survival in the long run. Human engineers and scientists continued working alongside the Tlerans, helping them not only to rebuild their infrastructure but to improve it. The Tleran ships, once old and barely functioning, were now being upgraded with advanced human technology. It wasn't just about restoring what had been lost. It was about giving the Tlerans the tools to thrive in a galaxy that had abandoned them. The Tlerans, for their part, were eager to learn. They had always been a highly intelligent species, and their natural aptitude for medicine and biology now extended to engineering and technology. Under human guidance, they began to develop their own hybrid systems, blending their medical expertise with human advancements in energy and defense. The partnership between the two races was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The humans didn't view the Tlerans as a race to be exploited or used for their knowledge. They saw them as equals, partners in a shared future. This mutual respect created a bond that went beyond mere survival. The Tlerans, who had once been on the brink of extinction, were now rebuilding their society with hope, determination, and the unwavering support of humanity. News of this alliance spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and not everyone was pleased. The Galactic Union, which had long considered the Tlerans a lost cause, found itself in a difficult position. On one hand, they couldn't ignore the fact that humanity had done what the Union had refused to do, save an entire species from extinction. On the other hand, humanity's growing influence in the galaxy was beginning to make certain factions within the Union nervous. For years, the Union had maintained its dominance by controlling which species thrived and which were left to fade into obscurity. The Tlerans had been deemed unimportant, and their survival had been seen as inconsequential. But now, with humanity's intervention, that narrative had been shattered. The Tlerans were no longer a forgotten race. They were on the path to becoming a powerful ally to humanity, and that alliance was causing ripples across the galactic political landscape. Some members of the Union saw this as a threat. They viewed humanity's actions as reckless and dangerous, believing that by intervening in the Tleran crisis, the humans had upset the balance of power. Others, however, were more impressed. They saw in humanity a race that was not only capable of great military strength but also of compassion and diplomacy. There were whispers within the Union of forming alliances with humanity, of trying to bring them into the fold before their influence grew too large to be controlled. Back in the Tleran sector, none of this political maneuvering mattered to the humans and Tlerans. They were focused on building a future together. With the immediate dangers behind them, the two races began to discuss the next steps. The Tlerans, grateful for humanity's intervention, formally requested to ally themselves with Earth and its colonies. They had no desire to return to the Galactic Union, which had abandoned them. Instead, they saw their future with humanity, two races working together to build something new, something better. This alliance was about more than just survival. It was about creating a society where compassion and strength went hand in hand. Humanity's intervention had shown the galaxy that power wasn't just about military might or economic influence. It was about standing up for what was right, even when there was no immediate gain. The Tlerans had experienced the worst the galaxy had to offer: abandonment, exploitation, and near extinction, but with humanity's help, they had been given a second chance. As the rebuilding efforts continued, the Tlerans began to find their place in this new galactic order. With human assistance, they established new colonies, rebuilt their medical research facilities, and even started to develop new technologies that would benefit not just their own people but the galaxy at large. The Tlerans had always been known for their expertise in medicine, and now, with access to human resources and technology, they were on the verge of major breakthroughs in the fields of biological enhancement and regenerative medicine. Humanity's influence continued to grow as well. Their actions in the Tleran sector had caught the attention of other races, some of whom had also been neglected or overlooked by the Galactic Union. These races began reaching out to humanity, seeing in them a potential ally that valued more than just power and profit. What had started as a mission to save one race had now evolved into something much larger, a movement to challenge the status quo of the galaxy and create a new path forward. But humanity wasn't interested in galactic domination. They didn't see themselves as conquerors or rulers. Their goal was simple: to help those who needed it, to stand against injustice, and to build alliances based on mutual respect and shared values. The Tlerans had been the first to experience this new approach, but they wouldn't be the last. As the alliance between humans and Tlerans grew stronger, the galaxy began to take notice. Other races, once marginalized by the Galactic Union, started to look to humanity for guidance and support. And humanity, for its part, welcomed them with open arms. The Tlerans were no longer alone, and neither were the other races that had been left behind by the galaxy's cold pragmatism. In the years to come, the Tlerans would become one of humanity's closest allies. Together, they would explore the far reaches of the galaxy, pushing the boundaries of science and medicine, and standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves. The Galactic Union, once the dominant force in the galaxy, would find itself increasingly challenged by this new alliance, not through war or conquest, but through compassion and cooperation. Humanity's rescue of the Tlerans had done more than save a species. It had sparked a new era in the galaxy, one where power was defined not by how much one could take, but by how much one was willing to give. The Tlerans had been left to die, but humanity had come to their rescue. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.